Thank you very much, Freak, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to MSI Tonight. I'm your host, Dash, joined by Frosker, Invitational, and Jat to close out day one of MSI Groups. How'd you guys feel after a 6-game day?
Great day, man.
Yeah?
I love the way EU started today.
Oh, it's going to sting for some fans. Vedius over here.
You know why? Because it can't get worse.
That's true.
Literally, the win percentage only can go up.
It could get, somehow both of them could lose to each other. I mean,
we don't have ties.
They do play each other tomorrow.
We are in Europe,
so
guys.
Somebody's coming away with a victory tomorrow when they play each other. We'll get towards tomorrow's schedule in just a bit. As we just saw, Kingzone closed out the day with a win against RNG. Again, the tournament favorites here, but a very different style employed this time around with the carry in the top lane for Con and more of a 1-3-1.
I loved watching this team play split push. I feel like they are the first team today to play it properly. We saw multiple times RNG grouping up mid lane and being like, hey, we have an Ashe, we're ready to fight. And Kingzone are like, no, we have this lane, and they belong to us, so we will continue to own them and force you to split apart. And the put all the resources into Uzi did not work out. And we never really saw him have an impact outside of when they were able to kill Khan.
That's because Uzi does this all the time. You know, it's a big moment, big matchup, and he takes a step back and he picks the Ashe. I kind of get it. You know, Ashe has a lot of lane priority. She's able to push it. She has the volley. You see the Ezreal, but they had priority pick. They had the opportunity to grab the Ezreal. They prioritized MLXG's champion pool by snatching away the Trundle when they've seen Graves running over Trundle or giving him problems pretty much all day. I feel like this is one of the situations where it was a bad comp read from RNG, and they got smacked for it.
I was about to say, you called that at the top of the day. You said RNG has been known for some bad drafts. The question was whether or not they'd be plagued by them throughout this tournament. Of course, this is just day one and just 2 games. We'll see if they can shape themselves up around the meta as we move into day 2. But Jat, Kingzone here. The game extended for quite some time, given how lopsided it began, and a lot of that was due to some interesting and somewhat intelligent summoner choices here out of Kingzone and Gorilla in particular.
Yeah, I thought the TPs were pretty awesome. You can see the level 1 where they invade to steal the blue buff from Trundle, but then he can just teleport bottom lane to make it not that big of a deal. Obviously, he recalls, swaps it out, goes right back in, and he had not only that one that we can see here to make it so they didn't lose anything bottom lane, he also turns a top lane gank, and then this one where he had actually teleported mid prior to that just to Tahm Kench ult down with the Rise.
And the thing is we've seen this now twice out of Kingzone, where they ran the teleport onto the Ezreal again, and I don't think they're going to play it every single comp. I don't think this is going to be a scenario where the tournament meta comes in, that everyone's stacking teleport, and we're zipping around everywhere. I think it works with this comp in particular because you do have the Ezreal. He's got the double tier build, which means now he has 2 power spikes. He's got the initial one when he completes the first tier, and then now he hyperscales into late game with the completion of the second tier, but he's super safe in the lane phase. He can sit back, he can farm with his Q, which affords him to drop either a defensive or aggressive summoner position in that second slot.
Right, we saw it used on the Ezreal in both games here for Prey, notably in the game against Team Liquid. Jat, you put some criticism towards Team Liquid in some of their decision making. That TP came in quite handy in that moment in terms of dealing with Team Liquid attempting to steal the game back.
Yeah, overall, I think Prey, being such a good player, allows him to bring the TP. I don't know if other teams would be able to replicate that, because this game, Uzi, probably the best laner in the world, was only up by 15 CS and didn't even take his turret. That's a little crazy.
That's without combat summoners on the other lane.
Yeah, exactly. So it's cool that Prey can do it. I don't know.
But wouldn't suggest that anyone tries to follow suit.
Pretty much.
If anyone does, though, I think the LPL teams might try to match it with this type of style. We saw it in the LPL. They were crazy about the unsealed spell. Like, obviously, everyone was. But what was unique about the LPL is because of how late our patches came, we were on the unsealed spellbook patch for much longer than the rest of the world. And we had like 4 different metas take over. And eventually, all of our supports were taking the teleport. They were TPing their Alistars into top lanes, mid lanes, trying to make plays like that. So if this does become a thing, I know that RNG do have experience moving towards it.
Now, and within this game, while Gorilla's running amok in the bottom lane, we also have to give a nod to Khan and what he was doing in the 1v1 on that Camille. Multiple, solos, if you will, here in the top lane.
I mean, we started the day off by saying, you know what, this guy can play tanks. We saw him doing it in his final, but he is much more suited and seemed to be much more focused on playing those carry styles. And when he's able to get a slight lead, he doesn't really stop. He is a dangerous threat in the top lane. And this is when we kind of tie it back to the triple threat carry. You have Prey and Gorilla down in the bottom lane who are constantly finding their own leads and just tanking all these ganks. You then try and invest a couple of resources into Calm. Maybe BDD comes up and helps as well.
Right.
But then BDD is no slouch. His rise in this game too, like you have so many lanes you can play through and you can enable any single one of them, that this team is just a threat regardless of who gets the lead.
And the question becomes, on day one, when a team shows you two different versions of themselves, both of which they're 100% capable of winning games with, how do you even begin to formulate attack plans for future days, right? If you look at their future opponents, I can't look at today and go, oh, pinpointed a weakness that I can exploit in Kingzone's game.
Yeah, it comes down to playing to your own strengths. Because I think Kingzone has proven to be extremely versatile. I do think the Ezreal should be taken away at the very least because it's super strong. Frostcurrent's mentioned that a bunch, but you're still going to have to play your own game because they're so good.
All right, with a solid 2-0 victory here for Kingzone over RNG, let's send it over to Shox and hear what Khan says after taking down RNG.
I'm standing by here with Khan after that second victory today for Kingzone, a game versus RNG where you guys were super far ahead very early on, yet it slowed down and you even had to sacrifice yourself in the bottom lane for your team to get Baron. Why do you think the game slowed down there at the end?
자, 이번 경기 때 초반에 엄청난 이득을 보시다가 갑자기 천천해지면서 밭레인에서 희생을 하셔야지 이렇게 내셔를 먹을 수 있었어요. 이 게임에 대해서 어떻게 생각하시나요?
그 아까 말씀하셨던 그 장면이 한 7분에서 10분 정도 더 일찍 나왔어야 되는데 이게 제가 아직 좀 뭐라고 해야 되죠? 긴장감이 덜 풀려서 그런지 제가 좀 긴장하느라 그 장면이 너무 늦게 나왔는데 뭐 다음 경기에서는 이런 부분 확실하게 피드백 되어서 더 빨리 좋은 경기력으로 보여드릴 수 있도록 더 노력할 거예요.
Sorry. That moment you're talking about, I think it should have happened earlier, like 7 or 10 minutes earlier. And I think I'm still nervous. I'm still under pressure. So I will get feedback and I'll prepare better for the next game.
Okay, a bit of nerves. Gorilla did tell me earlier that he thinks you guys are going to win the tournament. You're also huge favorites. You say that you're a bit nervous. How do you reflect on the team's performance so far after day one?
아까 고릴라 선수 인터뷰를 했을 때 이번 경기 우승할 것 같다라고 얘기를 했고 이제 킹존이 되게 강력한 우승 후보예요. 이제 칸 선수님이 보셨을 때는 어떤가요? 이번에 오늘 팀 성적을 보니까 어떤 것 같아요? 지금 컨디션이?
아니 뭐 성적이야 2대0으로 이겼긴 한데 마지막 경기 같은 경우는 훨씬 더 빨리 끝낼 수 있었음에도 불구하고 그렇게 못돼서 좀 상당히 아쉬웠고 뭐 제 자신 플레이에서 뭐 점수를 매기자면 10점 만점에 한 3점 정도 한 것 같은데 다음 경기에서는 많이 보완해서 10점짜리 경기력 보여드릴 수 있도록 노력하겠습니다.
So we won today 2-0, but still that last game we should have ended it earlier. And if I had to put a mark on myself, like out of 10, I would say 3. Yeah, I was supposed to. And for the next game, I wish you a better performance to get a 10.
Okay, well, if that was only a 3, then I think a 10 out of 10 will look very scary. So you played a Camille today, and we know that you love to play carry picks, and you're really the only top laner in the tournament that plays carry picks so often and so well. How do you think that flexibility is going to contribute to Kingzone getting victories at MSI?
칸 선수가 오늘 카밀 하셨는데 다른 이번 대회 출전한 탑 선수들에 비해서 약간 캐리력 그 챔피언을 잘하는 걸로 알고 있어요. 그게 킹존의 약간 유연성이 보여준 것 같은데 그게 다른 팀에 비해서 어떻게 이득을 갖다 줄 것 같나요?
아무래도 상대방이 더 압박을 많이 받을 것 같아요. 왜냐면 저희 바텀이 공격적으로 해야 할 땐 공격적으로 할 수 있고 이제 살짝 희생이 필요할 때는 희생할 수 있고 마찬가지로 반대쪽으로도 탑에서도 공격적으로 할 수 있고 이제 수비적으로 할 수 있어서 상대가 좀 많이 골치 아플 것 같아요.
So I think our enemies are gonna have a really hard time because our bot lane they can be really aggressive, but they can also sacrifice themselves, and I can play more aggressive. So as we can do both pressure bot and top, I think the opponent is gonna really have a hard time.
They will, I think so as well. Looking very scary. Fantastic performance on day one. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Shox. If that's a 3, I am terrified to know what a 10 is.
He's trolling.
He's got to be, right?
He's
There's
100% trolling.
Oh, my goodness.
It's not a 3.
What
That
does
is not a
his
3.
one
You're up
look
2K
like?
gold individually at 15 minutes, and you call that a 3 out of 10 performance.
So recently, LeBron James swept the Raptors, and after game 1 where he had a 31-point triple-double, he said he probably played his worst game ever. That's Khan saying he was a 3. Like,
Same thing.
clearly he had some things he wanted to improve on, but it was not a 3.
No, it definitely was not a 3.
Out of 4.
Sure.
Okay, yeah, all right. Now we got to something here. Oh, my goodness. All right, well, with that win, Kingzone moved to first place along with Flash Wolves, followed by Evos Esports and RNG sitting at 1-1. And, of course, Fnatic and Team Liquid are off to a rough start as they both lost their games today. Today, though, our analysts had their first chance to impress with their predictions. Let's go ahead and check out how they did. How do you guys think you did? Do you remember?
I think I'm okay with this.
Vidius? Vidius?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, okay, that makes
You
sense.
scraped by with the 500 record.
I put too much faith in my own region. That was the error.
That was the error?
That was the error.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Team Liquid played the tournament favorites today, so I feel like for most of us that was an easy prediction in a sense to call. We're gonna have to, Fnatic plays Kingzone tomorrow at the top of the day. We'll get into that discussion in just a bit. But I think the thing I want to talk about the most is the impressive day put together by Flash Wolves. We talk about the two teams sitting at 2-0, and I think the expectation, again, was RNG, Kingzone. Those are the top two teams. Of course, RNG had to play Kingzone today, but Flash Wolves sitting pretty 2-0 at the end of day one.
I mean, it looks like a strength of schedule. Obviously, we have a lot of play to go, but this is a good momentum warm-up for Flash Wolves. They tested the waters. They came in after a sweeping victory in their play-in stage. They hit Vietnam. They then look over and just roll over the top of Fnatic. And so I still have a lot of questions about Flash Wolves because while Maple played really well and they were making these clean bot lane dives, getting Betty involved, highlighting Sword Art, there was still some questionable Baron setups. Maybe not executing the fights as cleanly as possible, and so I'm still undecided on if I want to get aboard the Flash Wolves hype.
Personally, I am boarding the Flash Wolves hype pretty early
He's
on.
like full aboard.
Yeah, I'm like, I booked a ticket first class. These guys are looking great. I just feel like that they've came in pretty well prepared. I feel like they have a pretty good understanding of the meta. They recognize that playing through bot is a strategy they can rely on, but their mid laner seems super consistent to me. And also, it just feels like that when they draft a comp and they recognize its win conditions, they actually play towards them. Like, one of the big issues that we've seen from some of the other teams is they draft 1-1 and they're not properly setting up side lanes.
Fnatic and TL.
Sometimes we see them trying to set up poke comms and then they get countered by it with a good draft. Like, I just feel like that the Flash Wolves are coming into each game very well prepared, and they're executing upon it very effectively.
Yeah, I think one thing that helped them a little bit actually is the fact that this was not their first and second game of MSI.
Right.
It was their fourth and fifth game of MSI, and they did look more practiced than some of the other teams they were playing against. I do think that definitively they are in that conversation now of second place because everyone was saying Kingzone 1, and then there was that argument, well, is it going to be RNG 2? Is it going to be TL, Fnatic? And you just never mentioned Flash Wolves. Flash Wolves without Carcer wasn't supposed to do anything. But I think it's a worthy conversation.
We got to restart the entire conversation at this point, because on the flip side of the 2-0 is the 2-0-2s. Both Fnatic and Team Liquid starting out their tournament hopes here with a very rough day. Again, we're in the conversation for 2, 3, 4 position, and now they're just hoping they can make it out of groups.
I mean,
I want them to play each other. Because then someone's going to win.
They play each other tomorrow.
Half of the people will be not disappointed.
They play each other tomorrow. We will see that tomorrow. But I do want to talk about the 0-2 starts for both of these teams and kind of what went into it, starting with the EU team in Fnatic. We've talked a bit about Caps, the young talent here from EU. The Yasuo pulled out in the first game of the day. Had some good plays, some bad plays. Where are we sitting on this guy?
I mean, go. Take it. Fly.
The thing about Fnatic that reminds me a lot of their early regular season performance, because coming into the split, Caps kind of stepped up. He was just looking extremely good. It felt like that loads of champions fit into his playstyle, and he was just coming in as a huge carry. But then teams were starting to figure that out, and then all they had to do was actually wait for Caps to try and make a play, and they would punish him. Because Reckless couldn't properly work with the rest of his team. And this was the first 3 weeks of the regular season, where Fnatic as a whole hadn't figured out how to work together, with now Hylissang joining in, with new coaching staff in the form of Youngbuck. But then after week 4 and 5, they found synergy together. Now it feels like we've backtracked, where Reckless seems to be playing on the back end a little more passively than he should, and not really trying to be that big carry. And then all the pressure kind of falls on Caps. And unfortunately for him, he's still a young player. He still doesn't have that same level of experience as someone like a Maple does, as someone like a Reckless should. And unfortunately, he can't always be expected to perform when an entire team is relying on him to find that game-winning play. And we're just in this situation right now where the rest of the team need to step up, because I love the fact that Caps is being proactive. And even though he is making these mistakes, the rest of his team is not contributing the same way he is.
But ultimately, it's not, the same Fnatic that qualified for MSI. The top lane is different, not having Soaz there's not as much experience. Yes, there was semifinals and finals themselves, but that's not a lot of game time on the map. And we did have this discussion about where is Reckless. We're talking a lot about Caps, and Reckless had the ability to really pop off in the Kai'Sa game, wasn't as strong as we wanted. I don't know if it's necessarily a back step as it is turning a corner, a new iteration of Fnatic or the next stage of Fnatic, but they're still rebuilding, and the rebuild's not there just because it is different players. It's different positions.
I mean,
5-day group stage sounds like a bad time to be rebuilding.
I think Caps did make some mistakes, but compare him to the other mid laners in this tournament. Like, who played much better than Caps? I thought he did fine with the O2 team. It's the side lanes that were letting them down. Reckless is the MVP of this team. And he lost laning bases both games and made poor decisions in some of the team fights, right? There's definitely a big loss that's finally being seen with Soaz not in that top lane. Like, even if he can play now, he hasn't been practicing with the team, and you don't know what level he is going to perform at. So Fnatic will decide who gets to start based on who they think will be better on the day. But that top lane we saw was not the top lane from before Soaz's injury, right? That was a clear downgrade. And then I also think Reckless just wasn't his MVP self at all.
Yeah, I don't want to dwell on this for too long. I want to move on to Team Liquid, the other Western team that finished 0-2 on the day. Of course, their first loss against EVOS as well. And so let's talk about this squad and what we want to see out of the NA team moving forward.
Maybe this is why I'm a bit of a Fnatic apologist, because I look at TL and they're doing the exact same thing in both of their games. And yeah, game 1 was against Kingzone and then game 2 against EVOS. But, at least Fnatic came in and I felt like there was something new. That they felt like they had prepped for the tournament, that they were going to try different strategies, and maybe it didn't necessarily work. But then I look at TL, and they play the same old style, but that's fine. Play to your strengths, but they didn't play to the win conditions of their composition. So you see something that it should feel really good on. They know how it fits, but then they just put it on backwards. And you're like, play a side lane. You have GP Rides. Like, what are you doing trying to 5v5 into Alistair, Cassiopeia? Your pants are on backwards.
Yeah, I mean, Impact was super far ahead. Then he played like a Ornn. He was just frontlining in those team fights and dying. And Ole was not disengaging the way he needed to play a 1-3-1, right? So they almost defaulted back to that because I don't think they got the performance out of Ole that they wanted. I think a lot of blame does fall on Ole for today with his Tahm Kench play. I thought it was very poor. But beyond that, I agree with you. Losing to Kingzone pretty handily and then picking 4/5 of the same team composition and say, it's all right, they were just Korean.
Run it back.
Yeah, everything else is fine. You can change more than that, especially with all the prep time they had.
For me, it kind of ties back into your impact point because, especially in game 2, when I looked at that draft, I was just thinking, okay, they're going to play through bot. They're going to do what they did in playoffs. I think that they have very clear win conditions they can very easily play towards. The moment Impact dies 1v1, we see Team Liquid do nothing for the rest of the game. We see no pressure being played towards bot side. We don't see them trying to set up the 1-3-1 at all. And I feel like we're just kind of seeing what these two have nicely summed up, in which Team Liquid do not seem like the same team that we saw in playoffs. It felt like they came into playoffs extremely well prepared. They knew exactly what the meta was. They knew exactly how to take advantage of the strengths of the meta and play towards that. And then coming into this tournament, I feel like they just haven't demonstrated the same level of proficiency. Now, the bright side is for them, they started with the strongest team along with the expected weakest team in the group, and now the rest of the games, or at least the first half, are against teams that should in theory be around them. Unfortunately for them, Fnatic did lose 2 games, and if they can nab a win off of Flash Wolves, then that is a big opportunity for them to come back. So the schedule from here on could be a big upswing for Liquid, or it could just further solidify them in last.
A lot of work to do, 4 days to do it. We teased this tournament as the tournament of 80 carries at the top of the day. And so now with 6 games under our belt, 2 games from each of these 80 carries, I kind of want to work our way back through these guys as individuals and assess their performances here on day 1. To me, it seems natural to start with Prey, the ADC that ended in the 2-0 position and who we have, talked up to such a degree. Do we think he's living up to it?
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely.
He's so good.
He is so good.
Not only did they give him a comfort champion, I'd love to see what else he has available that he's brought to the tournament. But the fact that this team puts so much faith around him and they say we can build comps to enable you, but also we don't have to expect, like we can just leave you alone and you can fend for yourself. He's shown 2 different distinct styles and he's been a huge impact in both those games.
Yeah, did he die? I see that 17 KDA. A lot of times that can be a 1 death or a 0 death, but that's basic. That's at most 1 death with teleport instead of heals. So also played against Uzi already. Yes, they got some advantages from the top lane, but I think from day one, I would take Prey's #1.
All right, that sounds fair to me. Anything to add there on Prey?
I mean, the defining moment was when he E'd in on Uzi inside the base and just dropped the hammer right on him. Thanks for playing, mate. See you next time.
The fact that he pumped out over 1K damage on that very fast Ezreal game is somewhat astonishing.
Ezreal always does high damage, right? Because
Right.
of all the Q poke is what the counter is going to be online. But
Yeah.
I agree with you that
This is
DPM
baffling.
in that short of a game is incredibly rare.
All right, let's move on to Uzi again, the other star ADC who took a loss to Prey here in this final game.
So for me, I don't think that this is Uzi's final form. Obviously, a lot of tournament left to play. Again, short preparation time. They came in late to the tournament.
Yeah.
So day 2 is really going to be the tester for me of what type of form is Uzi. Well rested, have they got the preparation, have they got the scrim times, what is it going to be? I liked his Kog'Maw game 1. I thought that his lane phase was fine. Game 2 though, like I said, I don't want to see him go back to Ashe. I want to see them put more priority on the Ezreal and put him on playmaking champions. And people be like, but Ashe has a giant arrow. Historically, anytime Uzi picks Ashe, it happened against EDG, RNG when they lost the finals last year. It's him taking a step back. It's him chickening out of a lot of the matchups.
Now, I don't want to go too hard on Reckless, as we've already talked a little bit about where he fell short today and the fact that he just didn't impress. So instead, I'd like to reframe the discussion around Reckless in terms of what needs to happen tomorrow, right? What do you want to see? What needs to change about the way he's approached this MSI group stage for him to get back to that place where he can be the MVP of the EU region and lead his team out of the group stage?
I think what often gets lost in AD carry discussions is the fact that they are so reliant on their bottom lane. And this is a common theme between both Reckless and Doublelift today.
Okay.
Reckless did not seem like he was on the same page as Hylissang. That could have something to do with his Korean boot camp where he just solo queued, hundreds of games and then jumped back in with Hylissang. Or maybe with Doublelift as well. It just did not feel like either of these guys was in sync today. And they need to be in sync. These teams are too good to sack laning phase and turn it on later. They have to win lane.
And I don't think it's necessarily just the support. I also want to point out that Caps played Yasuo and he played Zoe, whereas like Uzi had, the supportive mid laners. Even the second game when Xiao, who was playing Swain, that's still a pick that's going to create so much zone control, and it's about the 5v5. I feel like a lot of these compositions, especially for Uzi in the Kog'Maw game, were set up to make him thrive, whereas Fnatic have been running more of those kind of dual threat in terms of where their resources are going and how they're setting up. So it's not like Reckless got, a Karma
Left
mid
out to
lane
dry
type
a
of
little.
con. Yeah.
So for me, I actually don't think that like as an individual or even as a bot lane they're underperforming. I kind of just see them as having low impact and being kind of scared. Like they just
That is underperforming.
But I mean, sure, in the context, but like mechanically, I feel like I watched this game, like considering the matchups that he's put into, he was put into 2 losing matchups today, and like his farming was still adequate. He was still above the 10 CS per minute. He was still holding his own in terms of the 2 versus 2. It was just that his impact was not there. He wasn't trying to, his positioning in fights was not out of this world. He wasn't taking that risk in order to find the play that would win his team the game. It just felt like he was taking a back step and he was trying to be the cleanup AD carry that would kind of be on the back line and kind of have Caps as the focal point. And that is not the Reckless that Fnatic fans want to see.
Right.
They want to see him alongside Caps. And that doesn't mean like diving on the front line, right? Working together to just run through whoever's in front of them. It just feels like that when we saw them in their finals versus G2, you could see that both of them were a constant threat that you had to respect. Whereas right now, it feels like the only threat you have to worry about is Caps.
All right, and that brings us to Doublelift, the final AD carry on the list. I mean, again, playing Jhin today, we talked about maybe some misreads on the meta for Team Liquid. Is that maybe where he just needs to shore it up? Hey, get on the meta and you'll be more successful? Or is there more play, mechanics, and decision-making, going into the works here?
I mean, I think it's another scenario with Reckless. It's an AD carry meta, but the AD carry, he needs a team in front of him to do something. And if Ole is having just a terrible terrible series on Tom Kench. His #1 job is to help Doublelift feel safe enough that he can position aggressively, that he can make those fights. And Impact is, frontlining as GP and just instantly dying. What is the AD carry supposed to do? I think Reckless and Doublelift were put in similar situations where as the rest of the team is collapsing, it does, shit rolls downhill, and they were standing on the bottom of the hill.
I do want to see some different picks, even though I'm not going to completely blame the Jhin.
Okay.
I don't know where Caitlyn's gone. I'm going to talk to some pros and figure
We
out
brought
what
that
happened
up,
with that.
yeah.
But, Kog'Maw, Ezreal, these are the things that Doublelift can thrive on. And if
they've disappeared.
You're going to carry a team, pick one of those champs.
Yeah, and I think for me, I think you summed it up quite nicely. But the key difference between Fnatic and Team Liquid is that I don't think anyone looked at Team Liquid and said, Doublelift has to perform for this team to win, right? Like, he's just been very consistent. He's been very staple. You can always rely on him, and I don't think he's necessarily been a detriment, right? The fact that he's playing now doesn't necessarily feel to me like that it's, I guess you could argue it's slightly different, but it feels like that the team around him is collapsing. Whereas for Reckless, he has been one of the persons that you need to step up. He is one of the 2 stars. So that's why I think there's a little more focus on Reckless, and why, for now, for the time being, my critical eye isn't so much on Doublelift, but more on the team of Team Liquid.
And really quickly, Betty played great today.
He actually,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So he wasn't in the conversation of the AD carry God matchup that everyone has been looking forward to, but he showed up, and he will continue to play well.
Absolutely do. Sitting at 2-0, going to look to continue pushing towards the top of the table. Of course, all of these players have 8 games left to go here in the group stage, so I want to take a look at what we've got coming up tomorrow. Now, the day starts with the O2 Fnatic taking on Kingzone, followed by RNG versus EVOS Esports, and from there, the undefeated Flash Wolves face off against Team Liquid before we get our second set of games. Now, the action begins at 11 a.m. Central European Summer Time, and that's 2 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Let's talk about some of these matchups that we can look forward to for tomorrow.
There's a chance that Fnatic and Team Liquid have both already won before that game, Dash.
That's true. So they could be sitting at 1-2, going head-to-head to go 2-2, hopefully.
I think these matchups look awesome for tomorrow. I'm super excited about both of Flash Wolves games as well, because you're really going to get to see if they get to deliver. And if EU and NA have taught us anything about World's group stages, it doesn't matter how you start. It matters how you finish the group stage.
Absolutely.
So don't be worried.
So I'm actually really excited for Royal versus EVOS. Because I felt like EVOS stepped up pretty significant in game 2. And while, for the first 10 minutes, they didn't really do anything, the moment Yijin decided, I'm going to gank a little bit more, he did not stop ganking. And I am fascinated to see how he will stack up against a jungle like MLXG, who I feel we're yet to see the true MLXG, who's known for constant ganking, his unpredictability, the randomness that he can bring to games. If you have Yijin on form and MLXG doing the MLXG, I think we could have a really exciting jungle match.
Which MLXG do you want to see?
The one that ganks every 2 minutes. He doesn't farm.
Right.
He doesn't counter jungle.
RNG actually brought 2 subs. You thought
That's
they
true.
had
Karsa. They've got
Karsa and MLXD.
Yes.
Yes, because there are 2 versions of that player, so I'm not sure which one you want to see.
I don't know what I expected to come out of that setup. That was so obvious, and then it still caught me off guard. Yeah, kudos there. All right, well, jungle matchups. I mean, yeah, EVOS does have their work cut out for them, though. They have to follow their RNG game with a Kingzone game tomorrow, so they definitely will need to step up if they want to walk away with some victories.
To be fair, if we're predicting that Kingzone and RNG are kind of 1 and 2, which is kind of what the tournament's showcasing us, then EVOS they get it out of the way, relatively early. Like day 2, whatever, it's fine. We just gotta look towards our Fanatics and our TLs and our Flash Wolves. To me, as Jat was saying, this is the most important day for Flash Wolves. I'm not aboard the Flash Wolves hype just yet, but day 2 will be the real gut check for me of, okay, Flash Wolves didn't come to just compete, they came to win.
And anything can happen, and there's still plenty of room for all of these teams to shuffle around in the standings. That's going to do it for day 1 of groups. For myself, the casters, and the entire live broadcast crew, thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow for more MSI 2018. Good night. Welcome to Berlin, Germany, and opening day of the 2018 MSI group stage. The champions from 6 different regions look to put their names in the history books as we kick things off with RNG taking on the home favorites in Fnatic.
Manages to get the last breath as well as shield comes up. And a Steel Tempest for the solo kill. Devour from Ming by so much time. Just taken out. That's the most fed member. over. Bwimpo follows immediately thereafter. Fnatic get caught out. Yuchin's under pressure. Whoa! What was that? Blaze coming in, trying to get the damage down. Betty's the target. Slay flashed into the pit, but he's trying to fight 3 and gets shut down. Flash Wolves obliterate EVOS Esports. There's the tongue lashing. Body blocked by Fredo's Gorilla. Now finds himself in trouble. First blood pickup by Pobelter.
Staying in the way, they are blocking the Q from BDD. Snipe!
By Prey! And BDD is going to flash forward, get that Mountain Q down. That will keep Double Lift in place long enough for Prey to shut him down.
Pulled right back in, the damage, the Skarner, the bind, the kill, and Cass gets one on the board for Fnatic. Hillsong, not an easy exit, but this one is going to get chopped down, but he gets a kill in the second in the back line. Death cap, but the shots come in. Reckless has so much damage. The shot comes in, he gets the crit, rolls the dice, and it comes up nice. Slowed down a little bit, but has turned away from the stun, and now a kidnap on the top side. Double Lift got caught out, and Let's Bounce gets the kill. Now Pope still in a duel. Look at it's going to be close. Bar on Rise. There's the big CC out of the support. The knocked up chain together. A 2-0 for EVOS Esports. They're going to get the win. 1-1 is the scoreline.
Topside.
MLSG is just going to fall. Min couldn't land the rest of the abilities in, and the fight comes in, keeps him alive. The shots can come through. They go for the kills first. Had the KDAs. 2-0 in the group stage for Kingzone.